Well, Brett, it's really nice to catch up with you again. Gosh, I think the last time I saw you, we were chatting at the Seattle airport about BEPS. And well, now I guess we're working remotely together. It's good to see you again.
Yeah,
So, Brett, what's been happening in
yeah. Likewise, even if it's virtual, it's still nice to see somebody.
totally. So what's been happening in the world of cross-border tax these days?
Yeah, great question, Rodney. Lots happened since we got together in Seattle. Just a matter of days ago, the OECD released the blueprints on both Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. I think everyone's familiar with that. We have a public consultation coming up here shortly on the blueprints themselves. We'll get a lot of input from taxpayers, governments, and the like. Really, probably the big news, right, is that as much as the inclusive framework tried to work toward a political agreement in 2020, that didn't happen, and that was part of releasing the blueprints on both Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. Is that hey, we've made a lot of progress, but we're not going to get agreement on this thing in 2020, and setting a new target for mid next year, right? So somewhere around June of next year to commitment to try and get political agreement at that point. And of course, that's created a lot of other ramifications with the parties here who really wanted a deal to get done in 2020. So we'll see how that plays out.
So as you looked through the documents and they were lengthy, were there any surprises there for you, Brett?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rodney. And the answer is yes, right? I think there's a couple of things that maybe were not anticipated, particularly if you haven't been following it as closely as maybe those who are directly involved in the policy side. One, I think, is that, even if, for thinking of US multinationals, even if guilty as grandfathered, it would not take care of all of the issues around, Pillar 2, right? Because one of the things that the blueprints made clear for Pillar 2 is that the subject to tax rule, which could impose withholding taxes, on payments to affiliated entities, that would not be turned off by a qualified income inclusion rule, right, or guilty grandfathered, right? So I think that was one. There's always a lot of concern around whether companies would be required to segment their global results for Pillar 1 in computing the amount A tax. Clearly, that continues to move forward with a strong answer of most likely yes, right? The blueprints indicated some companies maybe not, but others likely would. And there's a smaller group that they say. I wonder how small that group really is. I'm concerned it might be much bigger. That will have to do special segmentation reporting, well beyond what they have in their external public financial reporting segments. So I think those are probably the big ones we're spending a lot of time with clients on.
Interesting. And, I saw the revenue estimate from this. Not putting you on the spot, but crystal ball gazing sometime into next year. Where do you think this is going, or where might it end?
Yeah, another really good question that we're getting from everybody, right? And the revenue estimates are interesting, right? Because I think most people are surprised at the small amount of revenue that was estimated to be raised on Pillar 1, right? Which is really what's driving this discussion in many ways. All the money is in Pillar 2. And so it does raise some interesting questions, right? Is the hassle worth it? But maybe those estimates were based on assumptions they could ramp up and raise more money. That's a little bit of a scary thought, right? In terms of where this might end. That's something to watch. I think, where this might end, Rodney, is, when we get closer to that deadline next year, at some point, it's either got to happen or it doesn't happen, right? And I think in that world, right, if it happens, we get something that looks like Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, right? So we get this reallocation of profits and we get a global min tax. If it falls apart, right, I think the Europeans are going to be true to their word. And that is that they will focus on digital tax measures, which probably means unilateral DSTs and the like. And I think they'll essentially kind of cut paste Pillar 2, right, and have a European version of Pillar 2, a European min tax. And what that says to me is that no matter how this ends, a lot of the principles in the blueprints are going to be with us, right? Whether it's a European only version, which will affect everybody, or whether it's a global version.
So, so then what, as you go and talk to different folk about what they're doing, what are you telling people that they should really focus on doing today then?
Yeah, so I think on that one, right, a lot of companies, rightfully so in my view, said, I'm not doing anything now. I'm going to wait and see how this plays out. I think given what we've seen over the last couple of months, and particularly the last few weeks here, right, it's become very clear when we hear what's coming out of the European Commission, when we see the pandemic effect and the money that needs to be raised, et cetera. I think there's a very clear message that the principles that we're seeing in these blueprints, they're going to find their way into law, right? It's just a matter of whether it's European only law, whether it's a global consensus, et cetera. And so I think it's time to start thinking about, how this could impact me as a company. And that's where we're spending time with companies. And more companies have decided, I want to start modeling this out a little bit, right? See which of these rules I'm particularly sensitive to. And, once I identify the ones that are a big deal, if any, what should I start thinking about in terms of what the future might look like? Is there some planning there, that's appropriate, et cetera? So I think the modeling, messaging, up chain as to what's happening, that's where we're spending our time.
Well, it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, it's true. Governments have spent a fortune due to the health pandemic this year. Got to find a way to plug budget deficits inevitably. No wonder. I'm sure this is keeping you super busy. No wonder. Thank you very much for the time. It was good catching up with you again. I look forward to seeing you in person. Maybe not at an airport this time.
Yeah, I agree. Let's find a better spot. Maybe with a restaurant and a bar.
Sounds good. Okay, good talking to you, Brett.